rather than something I am currently studying. I had the opportunity to go down to San Marcos, Texas in February to attend a forensic facial estimation or reconstruction workshop with Karen Taylor, who is one of the people who is very large name in facial reconstruction. So I'm going to show you a little bit about what I experienced and talk about that. So, what is forensic art? Forensic art is any form of art that is used in court cases or helping identify suspects or victims in a crime. Facial reconstruction or estimation. Estimation is the term that's being currently used because we're not actually reconstructing the person's face. We're taking the skull and estimating what they might look like based on muscle and tissue that would go on top of it. Composite drawing would be an overlay of taking the skull, taking the tissue depth markers, which I'll show you in a second, and doing a sketch or drawing on top of that in order to estimate what the person might look like. I'm not going into composite drawing because the workshop was only on facial reconstruction. So this is my class. It was a 40-hour intensive workshop that it was over a course of 1 week. This is Ms. Karen Taylor on the answer. And it was comprised of artists, of people who were interested in forensics, people who just wanted to do more with sculpture. And I found that it was actually quite rare for an anthropologist to be interested in both art and bones at the same time. So that was a little bit unusual for me. So this is what I was talking about with tissue depth markers. There have been studies done on, mostly on cadavers, where somebody will push a pin into the cadaver to find out how deep the tissue is at any point on the skull. We weren't allowed to see what the young lady looked like. We all used the same cast of the skull, but because the picture of her might bias what our eventual sculpture looked like, she didn't let us see the picture until the end, and she didn't let us see her finished reconstruction either. So we all had to do it completely blind, as though we were actually doing a case. The first thing we did was the tissue markers. And the only ones that are a little bit problematic are the ones in the cheeks, because the way they got those particular tissue depth markers was from corpses that were lying on their backs. So the face and the tissue all fell backwards and didn't give a very accurate mark on the face where they were supposed to be, which left the cheeks very hollow. So a lot of the sculptures you'll see eventually in the presentation have a bit of a hollow cheek look to them. So, this is a little bit creepy. The first thing we did was add the eyes and plug the nose to make sure that those were protected. And we used gauze behind the eyes and the eye sockets and within the nasal aperture to make sure that nothing inside got damaged. These are just a cast, but when it's done in the forensic capacity, it's done on the actual skull. So the utmost care needs to be used with the skull because it may actually be evidence in case. So the eyes need to be even, and they need to be straight ahead, otherwise you get a cross-eyed look or, all over the place. That's not very realistic. Then we started adding tissue to the forehead first, and then around the outside of the eyes, and then we filled in the cheeks. I filled in the cheeks probably more than the tissue depth markers said I should, but because of the controversy with those markers, I was just going to toss them out, but for this exercise, she wanted to use them anyway. So then we keep adding clay. The hardest part, I think, was probably the eyes and the lips, because eyelids are not the shape you think they're going to be. They're a very unusual kind of shape. They go one over the other, and they're not crescent shaped. So that was the difficult part. And this is the finished product. She looked absolutely nothing like the picture. And that was actually, unfortunately, what happened with the entire class. But the picture, let's be fair, was from it was from her ID, from her, It was from her driver's license, and this young lady had a open bite, which she was actually trying to hide in the picture. So she was pulling her jaw back more than she would have done in the facial reconstruction. So you can see all the different ones look very similar, but they're still different enough that, I mean, you would be able to identify them as the same person, but they're different. That's me in last semester. And I've looked a little bit into doing it in 3D. We're doing it in detail. And the thing about doing it in detail is that there's been studies shown that the more generic the shape of the face is, the more identification you actually get out of it, because people don't concentrate on the small details. If they see details, they'll think that, oh, that's not the person that is missing, that's not my loved one, because that person didn't have a mole there, or that person didn't have this sort of feature to them. So the important part is to get the overall look rather than rather than focusing on details. So that's pretty much everything. Do you guys have any questions?